Okay. I was born in Los Angeles in 1951. I was a breech birth. In today's world, they would have taken me C-section immediately, but not back then. They left my mother in 24 hours of hard labor under the influence of a drug called twilight sleep. It was supposed to give women a painless childbirth. It was a combination derivative of opium that gave women horrible hallucinations and nightshade that was supposed to give them amnesia. And there was a 5% acceptable loss, and my mother was part of that 5%. And when my daughter was a little child, somebody abused her, and I believe they terrified her with the threat, if you tell anyone what I'm doing to you, the devil's gonna come and get you. And in the middle of that horrible labor, somewhere in there, she suffered a permanent psychotic break. She believed that I wasn't human, I was a devil's child, and I was sent to kill her while I was being born. So the psychosis met me at my birth. I was abused from birth. So by the time I was 5 years old, my mother had decided that suburbia LA was evil also, and so we had to go to the heaven of Alaska, the last territory frontier. So a month before my 6th birthday, we flew to Alaska, and then I started first grade up there. The first year in Alaska, my mother got what I call the great land grab fever. She sent my father off to stake claim to a 160-acre homestead right below timberline on a wilderness mountain. And then I was 7, the first step I took upon that mountain, and I was in love, in the total state of love with that mountain. And I want to give you a little brief idea of what the horrible 18 years of psychotic abuse from my very sick mother was like. 10 years ago, my doctor looked me in the eye and said, "You have advanced aggressive breast cancer." And that instant of terror and that traumatic stress when you get that diagnosis, and I recognized it. I spent the first 18 years of my life in that state of terror. It was nothing new to me. So the mountain itself, I would not have survived without it. So when we got up to the mountain, I'll give you an example of how magical it was for me as a child. If I could get away from my mom and go sit out on the land, there were these little white butterflies flutter around me. And they each had a different color paint around there, like somebody took a watercolor set and painted the edge of their wings. So some would be yellow, some purple, some blue, some green. Well, I understand now those butterflies don't exist in this ordinary world. They exist in the world of the angels. And they came and comforted me on that mountain. And then I realized that if God was going to take us to the Alaska wilderness, he didn't choose just any old valley to drop us in. He put us on a mountain where across the valley, the mountain over there had a gigantic stone and snow angel on it. Anytime I could get away from my mom and go out to the outhouse, I'd just stand there and gaze at that angel. And that to me is the state of love that's in the wilderness. It's the grace of God, and it's a faith without any words at all. So I'm going to fast forward to March 27, 1964. If anybody knows what happened at 5:36 in the evening, I went through the Great Alaska Earthquake. It shook at 9.2 on the Richter scale for 3 solid minutes. The tops of the trees whipping back and forth like wet spaghetti. The cars bouncing around like popcorn. The earth opening up and then slamming shut, big cracks. And I was a girl when that earthquake started and one when it ended. So I want to tell you something that happened the summer I was 15 on the mountain. And my mother had taken my sisters into Anchorage to do errands, and laundry should be gone for hours. And we had no electricity, no telephone, running water, no neighbors. So my dad had found a stainless steel kitchen sink and built a platform and a drain hole outdoors. And then he put it was right under a window that looked straight out in the wilderness in the back of the valley. So I was standing there at 15 doing the dishes. I had the washcloth. How am I going to do this if I have to stand in front of the mic? A washcloth in my hand. And I got this really clear, strong inner guidance in my heart, so I followed it. I put the dish rag down, and I walked out of the house, up the steep hill, and I was guided to build shelter out of spruce boughs, and then to sit on the earth, so I did. And at 15, I hadn't ever had any exposure to drugs, no exposure to Native American traditions. I just sat down on the earth and I disappeared to my body. And I was inside the mountain itself. And I felt with that existing without movement, that force of being. And when I think back on it, it was like being inside a giant hug. And then my consciousness returned. And the next thing, I was inside a little blade of grass, brilliant green. And for the first time in my life, I felt what it was like to not be alone, like if each one of you was a green blade of grass just swaying in the breeze. And then my consciousness came back. And then the next thing that's very hard to do standing still is that I woke up in the body of a wolf. And the memory is as clear as getting out of my chair and coming up here. I have a big black nose out here, and I am running. I am running so fast, my fur is like smashed down across my face, all the way down my neck, and all the way down the back of my body. And I'm running low to the ground, and my tail is straight out behind me. And it's hard to imagine what that feeling of power and of freedom and of joy felt like. And then poof, my darn consciousness came back. Then I disappeared briefly into a mist. It ended up in the wilderness on the bottom of the valley floor. And I was naked, a full-grown woman, alone in the wilderness, singing this incredible song. And the people way in the other part of the valley, the civilized people, could hear this song. Who's singing that song? What is that melody? Well, eventually, first one man came back far enough in the valley through the foliage of the woods, I could see his eyes. And then another man came, and through the foliage I could see his eyes. And then poof, I was back in my body in the little lean-to, and I got up and walked down the hill, into the house, to the kitchen sink, and picked up my dishcloth and went on with the rest of my life. And I never told anybody about this experience until I was 32. And that woman said, oh, that was a vision. I went, oh. And now I know it was about leading me to the Baha'i faith personally, and to Baha'u'llah, whose Arabic name means the glory of God, but that's another story. Thank you very much.